This is Vibe Talks, exclusively on Vibe 105.
Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for Vibe 105 with a Vibe Talks segment, and I'm happy to be joined by my guest today who's going to be talking about all things International FC Academy. He is a technical director. He is Coach Peppe Raso. How you doing, Peppe?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Giancarlo.
And this is an exciting week. You have your academy there, International FC. Can you just talk to our listeners about the academy and about the camp that's taking place this week?
Absolutely, yes. Starting from the academy, founded in 2009. It's a project that is founded mainly on two main columns, two main concepts. One is bringing an international approach in terms of methodology, bringing here methods that are used back home in Europe, in particular Italy, which I have the honor to represent here in Canada. And through that, try to develop players in a very similar way to other parts of the world, Europe in particular. The other one, which is parallel to this, is to constantly keep our players exposed directly to international football, both from a methodology point of view, but also for career opportunities for our most valuable players. This summarizes the vision that we have since 2009. The camp, the combine, the Pro Combine in particular, falls into both objectives. Bringing here different methods in a very international way, and at the same time expose our players to possibilities that might be generated by this event. In particular, the feeling that the players have is the one of traveling the world without leaving the field. This year, our players are rotating in the hands of colleagues that we invited from Serie A, Frosinone and Sampdoria in particular, then from First Division in Switzerland, Lugano. And also this year, we started also introducing the South American approach to this event by inviting a coach from Peñarol in Uruguay. From this, obviously, the benefits from a development point of view are tangible, but this year in particular, our players were able to showcase characteristics that were of interest of more than one of these coaches. So luckily, some of our players will have career opportunities out of this event.
And how did this all come about, the academy? Because this is something where a lot of kids will want to see international exposure, professional level. So what did the concept and the idea happen?
The concept behind this particular event, or you are asking what's the concept behind the whole IFC project?
Yeah, the whole IFC project. Like, what made you want to, get together with everybody?
The idea is this. When I first came to Canada, I was directing here in Toronto the AC Milan Academy. I noticed what no one really speaks about, which is the amount of talent that there is in Canada. I believe that there is a false belief that the talent is missing in Canada. I noticed that it was actually the opposite case. It's an extremely beautiful resource that Canada has. What was missing was a proper methodological approach in order to develop players and develop them in a similar way than they are in Italy in particular. So based on this observation, the experiment originally was this. I went back home, also in agreement with my partner Frank in this adventure. Went back home and with my UEFA professors, we developed a methodology that, yes, represents our way of working back home, but it considers the sociology, the geography, the economy, the distances, the weather, the climatic situation of this country. The experiment consisted of, in time, creating players that have a similar approach to the game of football than the ones in Europe. And their idea ended up being successful, proving the fact that talent was never, and I believe will never be, an issue in Canada. But players need to be cultivated properly with the right amount of knowledge, and I want to add with the right amount of patience in time, because the long-term approach and the systematic approach is what ends up helping the player the most, achieving his own soccer goals. So the idea, the original idea was this particular consideration. And now, 14 years later, we are here.
It's good. And it even shows that, like, all the players that come out to the camps, like, there is a path to be a professional and get noticed at this level. Has there been any, like, kids in the past that have really surprised you and how good they were, and maybe further along than other kids that performed?
Absolutely. I had to say, answer first in a very generic way, and then I can go into the specific. Players surprise me. It sounds a little bit rhetorical, but it's the truth. They surprise me every day, and from different points of view. Sometimes it's their passion, their spirit of sacrifice. Sometimes abilities that were hidden and that come out suddenly. Of course, not every player is identical to the one next to him. Yes, it happened that players were able to flourish to a level that made them possible candidates to have a certain level of careers. Luckily, we have players that, except for scholarship goals, they were able to also exceed that kind of goal and have a career on the pro levels in different countries of Europe. The curiosity, though, is that statistically speaking, if I can make a small statistic out of our experience, very rarely those players were the ones who were already performing when they were very young. The majority of them flourished at a second time. And in my opinion, my theory, the advantage that they had is that because they weren't very noticeable when they were younger, in a way they lived their very first years with an amount of stress, let's call it like that, stress that was inferior to the players that were performing very, very well already in very young ages. That allowed them to get to key ages of a soccer player with a lot of mental energy, on top of all the technical improvement that they produced in the years. And it's a very curious thing to see how in the years that becomes a trend that you are able to detect clearly. And that's why I always insist on the concept of patience, being patient with players at cost of sometimes even giving up some results in ages where they're not yet important, but always with the mission of being on the side of the player, providing him with proper developmental tools, because very often the players reveal their real value later on, and if the facts proved it.
And it's good that you mentioned patience, because do you see at times when the parents may be a little bit not patient? You know, like they come in, they expect the kid to be Del Piero and Totti. So what message do you tell the parents when they come in and the expectations they have before the kid gets into the camp?
My advice is to always remember two things. The reason why the player, their kid, I'm talking about parents of young kids in those cases, the reason why they chose soccer, and they chose it because they like it. if they were the one who chose it, because sometimes it also happens that parents choose for kids, and that's never a good idea. But in the cases where the kid actually show this passion for the game, they have to remember that that's the only reason why they chose it, because they enjoyed it. And number two, be supportive and appreciative of the sacrifices that the little kid does in order to commit to sport, because we know that life in North America keeps even very young kids much more busy than kids of other parts of the world. So the approach that a parent should have should be the approach of a person who enjoys the kid following his passion and his enjoyment for the game, and also always being appreciative and thankful of the little sacrifices that his kid makes, because later on those are going to become very important skills in life, in things that are even more important than football itself. That's my advice. Serenity always throughout the whole path.
Then, when the kids come in, like, what is your style and methodology in terms of developing a player? And is it more tactical than more of a fitness? Because some coaches, they say, okay, we need the players to be fit on the field. Do you mostly look at the tactics first before you get into the other stuff?
No, absolutely not. Actually, the very first approach, so at the beginning of the path, assuming that you start working early enough on a player, is actually the opposite. It's a very ludic approach. He rides that enjoyment that I just mentioned, because what they imagine, I'm talking about young kids who are making their first step, what they imagine before starting their soccer journey is them playing. Playing is a word that is associated to a ludic approach to the activity. Then within the ludic approach, enjoyable environment as well, obviously you find ways in an integrated way, so activities that tackle a little bit all the aspects of the game. You hide the medicine into the pasta, of course, but the feeling that the very young players, the kids, need to have is that they are already doing soccer, and that has to be the ability not only of the content of the sessions, the ability of the coach to choose the content of the session, but even transferring their approach, their ludic approach to the player, because kids, and in my opinion, my personal opinion, also adults, learn more when they are enjoying what they do. Yeah. This is a very generic way to describe things that might require a little bit more details, of course, but in general, an integrated approach that takes in high consideration the word game in all its different meanings, so a ludic approach, is international. It's internationally recognized as the right approach.
And I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of things related to Italian football. Gianluigi Buffon finally retired. He was keeping my childhood alive. 28 years he was playing, and he finally retired. Did you ever meet him or have any stories about him?
Sì. I had the luck to meet him in Coverciano, in Italy, which is the Italian National Team Technical Center, where I studied for my licenses. Surprisingly, I can tell you that number one, what people see is actually true. He is a very deep individual, a person that you can relate to immediately, because he has a level of humanity that is transparent, not only in what he says, even in the way he conducts himself. I can also tell you that the Buffon that people don't know is also a very, very, very funny and entertaining person. In general, I think that his main strength falls into the person there is. A person that, number one, is able not to take himself too serious, which allows you to last longer in anything that you choose to do. But at the same time, a person that makes spirit of sacrifice a form of, let's call it, religion to follow. And in my opinion, when you have those abilities, which for me personally speaking, we're talking about the best goalkeeper in the history of football because of how long he lasted at those levels. You put it together, you match it with a level of humanity that is uncommon, then there you go, you have the recipe of the legend that he became and that he will always remain.
And just even Buffon, like he went down to Serie B with Juventus. So what does that say about his character, that he could have went to any team in the world and maybe Premier League, La Liga, but he stayed? Like, what does that say about him to go down to Serie B?
Exactly what I said about him a few seconds ago. It tells you there is a person that puts certain values at the top of his priorities, and I can guarantee that if you have the luck and the opportunity to meet him, those qualities are going to be transparent after seconds. He's not a person that will ever make you notice who he really is, his greatness. He's a person that will always try to relate to whoever is in front of him. And in my opinion, the level of humanity is really at the root of certain decisions that he made. But at the end of the day, those are the choices that make you live forever, in my opinion. He had the courage to make them, him and a few other players, and in my opinion, that's going to make him stay forever.
And before we wrap up and let you go, because it's a busy day for you, I see the kids in the background. So how can the listeners and viewers here at Vibe 105 stay up to date with everything that the Academy does? And if you're on social media, they can follow you?
Social media is the most direct way to be updated, because it's again updated on a daily basis regarding any news, any programming, any ideas, everything. There is also a more traditional way, which is going to our website, which is www.intlfc.com, in a more structured way. But I said that social media are the funniest and easiest way to be updated about us.
Highly recommend it. Coach Peppe, appreciate your time and coming on here, and we hope you have a great day.
My great pleasure. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Vibe Talks, exclusively on Vibe 105.